Welcome to CEO Chats India. Today we are with Wing Commander Manosh Kumar Bose.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and amazing. I mean, it's hardly often that I get a chance to meet somebody with a title like a Wing Commander.
Pleasure.
And it must be interesting when you were growing up as a kid, right? What was happening in your life that inspired you to get into the military and the armed forces?
When I was a kid, the first instance that came to my mind was the 1962 Chinese aggression. I was a very small kid, about 3 years old, and I used to read a lot in the newspapers about what's happening. Not that I would be
3-year-old kid reading newspapers. Okay, that already tells me something.
Not me reading newspapers, people reading newspapers and talking about it.
Yep.
You know, my uncle and
sure.
yeah. So I used to get a little inspired by what was happening. And then something inside me told me that this is the place to go. I mean, very young kid, maybe that's the time you start developing your mind into deciding what you're supposed to do in the future. And another person who, I don't know how, I used to get very inspired when I used to see his photograph was John F. Kennedy. Why it happened, I really don't know. Nothing to explain.
Well, in the 60s, everybody was inspired by Kennedy, I guess.
Yes. And then I came to Hyderabad, my fault, Jabalpur. In Jabalpur, it's a huge cantonment base. And every person I used to see in uniform in the army, I used to get very inspired.
So these are early role models
absolutely, absolutely. And these officers' cadre, when they used to go, people used to salute, the alertness, the kind of attitude that they used to have, the respect that they used to show to people, to each other, the kind of support I used to see the Jawans getting. I used to always feel this is the place to be. And trust me, as I grew up, this became more and more stronger.
Okay.
And I had decided, come what may, I will join the armed forces and nowhere else. That was my passion. And a lot of people used to at least laugh at me that how can you just think about one direction? I says, that's how it should be. You have to decide on a goal and move again, forward.
True clarity of thought and true clarity of intent.
I said, nowhere, no matter what happens in my life, I will not be anywhere else other than the armed forces. That's the place for me to be.
And why aviation? I mean, was that a passion?
It wasn't aviation. Aviation was by default.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to be in the army. And the first chance that came through was the Air Force, the SSB. I wanted to be more in the army and more so in the infantry, foot soldier. So,
and you really wanted to go to war.
Absolutely. 1965 was the time when I was slightly more, the age had caught up and I could read a lot by then in 65, and I could read a lot of these inspiring stories. I remember one inspiring story of a gentleman called Major Bhaskar Roy in Cham, who destroyed many tanks single-handedly with his sharp acumen and intelligence. So these are the stories which used to inspire me. General Jain Chaudhary, Air Chief Marshal, now Air Field Marshal Arjun Singh, they were the then role models for me. And then came the 1971 war after that. By then I was pretty much, in my senses to know what's happening around. And my father used to be one person who had inspired me a lot with his intelligence, with his awareness, with his reading, with his thoughts and mind. He used to explain me every single thing, and I used to be amazed those days when there was no TV, no nothing, because he was a phenomenal reader. Why the aircraft had struck Agra in 1971 and Indian radar could not detect. So he had told me then that when you do a low flying, you can avoid radar detection. So these are the things,
the stories that inspire you.
Yes.
So what were some lessons that you learned, in the military or in the armed forces?
The biggest, as I said, is decision making, communication skills, interpersonal relations, and support for your subordinates. Absolute clarity in your thoughts, honesty and integrity in your approach. These are the things that teaches you in the armed
forces. So these
forces.
were fundamentals that were drilled into you?
This is the things which has been drilled, and I would be very clear to tell that the principles of management evolved from the armed forces.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of
it. Subsequently things changed in the corporate world, people started taking different directions, but the basic principle of management and leadership came from the armed forces.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, even hierarchy and structure and order.
How should you lead your men? What should be the basic principles in terms of communications? There should be absolute clarity, no ambiguity, unambiguous transmissions, ambiguous thought processes, and the more importantly is that every single thing that you do should be known to your subordinates. The dissemination of information is a must for you to move together as a team. That is what I learned.
And you ultimately ended up at the ATC, the Air Traffic Control Unit, and that's a very high, a lot of pressure, right? Decisions you make could determine life and death of
Absolutely.
many people. So there were many hands in your, many lives in your hands, right?
Absolutely.
So what were some lessons, especially at that point, having all
That's
this
what
pressure?
I said, clarity of thought, split-second decision making.
And how did you learn split-second decision making? Was there a process to get to that point, or
You
it's
have to be more and more aware to the situation.
So putting all things together.
Yes,
and trying
absolutely. You should be completely aware of the situation that you are in. In fact, even if you don't have a radar, if you close your eyes, you should be able to kind of visualize what's happening in the air. If an aircraft says, I'm over so-and-so position and at so-and-so area, at so-and-so altitude, if you close your eyes, you should be able to, the map should be right in front of your eyes. If you can absorb that map, and this is one thing which was told to me by one of my instructors, that when you go to an air base, in a flying base, and before you do air traffic controlling, read the map carefully, close your eyes, and see how the map looks like in front of you.
almost like a chess player who knows
Yes.
the board
So if
without
you
even
can
looking
do
at
that, then you'll be able to do your job much better. And that's what I used to
it. So
always
really
do.
the power of visualization and being able to...
Absolutely. Complete awareness of the situation, being aware, and being oblivion to the surroundings around you. That's very important.
And-
There may be many things around you happening.
And you made a big transition then from in the armed forces, military, moving into a civilian role in an organization, leading an organization first with NGOs and later in the healthcare space. It must have been a big transition.
Absolutely, it was a transition, but I would also say that my stint in the armed forces helped me a great deal, and that's what has helped me in whatever job I did in the civil.
So prior to this, you were telling me about the importance of punctuality and a number of other values that you hold dear. What are some of these things that you learned from the army that easily could be replicated in the corporate or in the private sector?
Decision making was one thing, because every subordinate is looking forward to you as a leader to give him a decision.
And
if
fast,
you're
good, effective.
If you're indecisive, he will also be confused, and confused will lead to chaos. Chaos will lead to conflict. So that is one thing which helped me a great deal in giving them. You may be wrong many a times in your decision making.
But you still
not
make-
every decision can be right. You should be able to make a decision, and you should be able to empower others to make a decision. That's very important. You only alone should be making a decision, no. You should also empower your subordinates to make decision. Give them that kind of an empowerment. Give them that kind of a learning. Give them that kind of an authority that they should also be making a decisions. The purview may be small within their jurisdiction, but still empower them to make decisions. Do not say that you can correct them, but do not intimidate them. You must tell them if he's gone wrong, correct them through your experience, through your expertise, through your learning. You may find that he's making a wrong decision. Correct him, but allow him to make a decision. That will help you and your organization to grow. That's for sure.
And when I think you started out first helping in the society that was helping leprosy and a number of other run by a trust, I believe, or it was an NGO, right? You mentioned that as an NGO.
Lepra.
When you went into this space, right? What was happening in your mind? what were you thinking in terms of your task at hand and how to execute it? And what were some key lessons that as you finish this role and move to your next role, what were some key lessons that you learned, especially since this being your first transition?
The key lesson, as I said in the beginning, and I have always believed, that there is no end to learning. And if you are hungry enough to learn, and you keep your mind open to learning from anybody can be your teacher. The junior most person in the organization can be your teacher. He or she can be able to tell you something which will help you in growing. And this I have done it in the services, armed forces also. This I have done it in the civil. So when I was making this transition from the armed forces, air traffic controlling, into a world of leprosy where everything is technical. How you deal with a leprosy patient, how you treat a leprosy patient, how you cure a leprosy patient, the kind of medicines, everything. It's very technical. It's nothing to do with, you have a lot of passion.
You had a huge learning curve that you had to quickly learn.
A huge learning curve, and I kept my mind open. I would go to the field, I would speak to the grassroots level workers, and give them that empowerment that I may be the deputy CEO. Don't bother. To you, I am a student. Please teach me. Whatever you're doing, tell me how you do.
So really have the humility. I guess that's what I hear from you. You have the humility to learn from anyone.
Absolutely.
That you're not as smart as you think.
You have to be down to earth. You have to be humble, and that's when you can learn. If you try to show your powers and authority, you can not grow much.
So then talk us through the next few. You ended up ultimately moving and ultimately being a CEO of a hospital. Talk us through that transition.
Yeah, as I said, when I was in leprosy, I first started my journey in leprosy in the year 2005. I left in 2004, August, and then in 2005 I joined leprosy. And that is where my learning began in the medical field. So I started learning, going to the field, working with the workers, staying in the field for a long days to learn how these things happen. And many things came up, whether it was the leprosy, whether it was TB and HIV. Another thing which caught my passion was eye care, because, can I continue a little?
Sure.
What happened was that in leprosy there is something called reconstructive surgery, which is done to a limb, to your leg or hand or anything. Sure. Something like that happens to your eyes also. Basically your nerve goes dead. So you are unable to work with your nerve. Same thing happens with your eyes, and your eyelids remain open. So because of that, the people start going blind. It's a leprosy affected problem. And what we do is a reconstructive surgery. So during that reconstructive surgery, people in the villages would not understand. So this is called the lagophthalmos. So the people would come forward and say, why don't you treat us for, cataract and all that? And we used to tell them, sorry, we don't treat cataract. What we are doing is something a part of a leprosy. But they were very keen. So I said, why not make an attempt? And we used to have these small IP projects in various parts in Odisha. And we spoke to the people, various doctors and all that, and they were ready to come forward and do some surgeries for us in cataract. So we did those, and we started appealing, for funding and all that. Sight Savers International UK was one of them whom we approached for funding, and they came and took a look as to how we were doing, and they were shocked. They said, this is not the way to do eye care. So he says, give us funding. So seeing our passion, they said, okay, we will fund you. And that was the first time, I think the only time, that Sight Savers funded us for instruments, that is medical instruments and equipments, for infrastructure and manpower training. So every single thing was taken care. So we developed a 30-bedded eye hospital.
Wow. So you played a big part in influencing and driving a complete, from idea to...
It didn't come so easy. I had to travel to many hospitals, LV Prasad, Shankara Eye Care, then Aravind Eye Hospital.
Nothing good comes easy, I guess. Huh?
Nothing. You have to learn.
And you have
how do they manage these hospitals? How do they manage these patients? How do they get these patients to come together? What is the business model that they have? Because you are also doing funding, but nothing is, unless and until there is a stability, you cannot make progress. So all these things I had to learn, being with another friend of mine who was a project coordinator. And this is how I came across many of these eye care players. And they were very fascinated that I was taking so much of interest. But the most fascinating part in this was, lepra always dealt in infectious and vector-borne diseases. Eye care was neither an infectious, neither a vector-borne disease. And their mission statement spoke only about vision. Yes. And I changed that mission statement by giving a lot of examples and pressure on the board. The board finally succumbed to my pressure, and they changed their mission statement. Wow. And had to add blindness as one of their activities, which was not there earlier. So seeing my passion, the Vision 2020, which is a big program, which was actually instituted by our late President Abdul Kalam, and he was the patron of that. The CEO of that Vision 2020, Dr. Noha, Rajesh Noha, he approached me and he says, your passion is very infectious. And will you be able to hold a Vision 2020 program from lepra? I said, why not? So first I got lepra into the Vision 2020 member, because we had to register for that, which Lepra never was, obviously, because it was a leprosy program and a leprosy organization, but we made them a member, and then we took it forward to Vision 2020. President Abdul Kalam had come, and that's when L.V. Prasad, Dr. G.N. Rao, the chairman, said, why don't you join me? So I thought, let me make a transition to, single speciality
Sure.
of eye care, and I joined.
And then there's a different learning curve.
Different learning curve. Then I went from there to Apollo, and was their CEO for one of the hospitals in Karnataka.
And today you're CEO
So again, my vision widened from there, because I came across super speciality things, which was again new to me. But again, I kept my mind open, humble enough to learn. So doctors are not easy to deal with, but they were very happy with me, the way I approached them, spoke to them. The interpersonal relations of mine came in handy there. From there, I came back to Hyderabad and took up another job as a senior director of operations in an organization called Population Health Services of India for mother and child healthcare. Again, a different learning.
So a lot of learning, a lot of...
Yes.
So I mean, obviously, your whole life is characterized by a lot of learning and development and
I still am hungry.
Personal growth. And you obviously are still hungry.
Yes.
We don't have too much time, but just to wrap this up, if you were to give advice to a young person who's just coming out and they're looking at you, hey, I want to be like Wing Commander here, I want to be somebody that is always learning, that is always growing, that is, ultimately a leader that is passionate about the space that they're serving and is able, not just passionate, but is able to execute and deliver results, right? What sort of advice would you bestow on this young people? The advice that I would give to a youngster is, first thing, you must have an absolute clarity of thought. Your goal should be designed, and then you should always be there should be a hunger for learning. Clarity of thought is very important, and you have to set your goal, that this is what I wish to do. And when you set in a goal to achieve, single-mindedly you must pursue that. And in the bargain, there might be many obstacles and hurdles, but you should have the tenacity and the strength to overcome those hurdles. Keep your mind open. Keep your hunger for learning open, as much as you can learn, and be humble enough to learn from anybody. That is the main thing. And that is how your subordinates will look forward to you. That this is a man who is ready to take an advice from him and also ready to give an advice. So they will look up to you as a good leader only when your communication skills are good. And communication per se does not mean that how well you speak. It is how well you listen. Right.
That's also very important in a leadership. You must be able to listen properly, understand and appreciate their viewpoint, and give that due respect to them. And that is how you can continue to grow and become a good leader.
Fantastic. Manoj, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you here. Thank you so much for being here on CEO Chats.
Thank you very much.